Hello and welcome to the Your Financial Pharmacist Real Estate Investing Podcast, a show all about empowering pharmacists to achieve financial freedom through real estate investing. I'm Nate Hedrick, and each week, my co-host David Bright and I explore stories from pharmacists all over the country who are achieving their real estate goals while maintaining a meaningful career in pharmacy. Whether you're a first-time investor or a seasoned pro, we're here to provide education and inspiration about the world of real estate. Please note, this podcast is intended for educational purposes only and should not be considered financial or investment advice. Hey, David, how's it going?
Hey, good, thanks. How you doing, man?
Not too bad. It's winter. There's not a lot to do sometimes. I feel like, we're kind of stuck, but that's okay. We're getting through it. Cleveland winter, Michigan winter. We're used to this, right?
Yeah. It's the cold winter, so there's some that can be done, but it's not the same as like a Michigan summer, which is amazing for those that haven't had a chance to come to Michigan.
There you go. And I know we've been following some of our friends in warmer places on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever they're located. And one of our favorites to follow on social media is Myke and Jenny White, who we've had on the show a couple times before. And they were sharing some awesome stories, so we wanted to bring them back on the show.
Yeah, I love what they're doing right now. They've got several different tidbits they've dropped lately that are not only just really good nuggets for strategy, but great just inspiration on making things work in a wild market and finding ways to help other people. They're just great people to talk with. I love the interview today.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love the way that they're really trying to take investing to a level where it's not just investing, it's helping. It's being engaged in the community. I think especially as, we're kind of in this weird state right now, right? Where it feels like we're kind of in a recession. We're probably in one. People aren't really ready to call it that yet or whatever. And as it gets worse, there's going to be investing that takes place that feels like people are making money off people in a bad situation, right? That always comes up when you have a downturn in the market. And I feel like there are still ways to approach real estate investing in an ethical and community focused way. And that's exactly what Myke and Jenny do. And I commend them tremendously for that. And I love talking to them because they exude that when they talk about what they're trying to do.
Absolutely. There's a lot of real estate investors that almost that predatory vibe of like taking advantage of a bad situation. But the one thing that they emphasized and we just kept talking about throughout the interview is being helpers, not hagglers. Like I just love that phrase. And so they have some great mindset nuggets in there for this episode, but also some really good strategy on how, as the market shifts, what are some things you could be thinking about that might work in 2023 that weren't really a fit in 2022 or 2021, but make a lot of sense right now.
Yeah. Hopefully you guys enjoy as much as we enjoy talking to Jenny and Myke. And with that, I'll take you to the interview. Hey, Jenny, Myke, welcome back to the show.
Hey guys, we're glad to be back.
Hey, good to be back.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Thank you.
You might be setting the record now for the most frequent guest, so kudos to you guys.
Celebrity status.
That's right.
We hope to be back in the future more times too.
Perfect. We love it. Well, for those that may have not heard you on past episodes, first of all, go back and check it out. You guys are awesome. But give us a brief recap, a little bit of the pharmacy story, a little bit of the real estate journey, just kind of catch everybody up to who you are and where you've come from.
Yeah, so I'm the pharmacist in the relationship, graduated in 2017 from Creighton University. At the time, Myke and I were in Washington, so I did my PGY1 residency there in Olympia. Then Myke will tell a little bit more about his story, but he's active duty, and that brought us down to Mississippi. So I was an assistant professor at William Carey for a couple years, and now I just took on a role at the VA here in Biloxi as the oncology pharmacist.
Nice.
So my name is Myke White. Like Jenny alluded to, I'm active duty military. I just hit my 15-year mark. We are in Biloxi, Mississippi. So I originally came down here to be a technical school instructor. So all the airmen that are just graduating basic training and going into their specific jobs. My specific job is IT related. So I teach that before they go ahead and go over to their next duty station. Halfway through my tour, I took a special duty over at Wing Headquarters, doing more so emergency management stuff. So I'm a little bit out of my element. But after April rather, I'll actually be going back to the schoolhouse to teach for another 3 years. So we like Mississippi so much and we enjoy the opportunities that we've had here. So we're just trying to take advantage while we can.
I like it.
That's perfect. I know you also on the investing side talked about some pretty rapid growth. You purchased a new primary residence where there was an in-law suite that you rented out. You rented out your former house, which is one of my favorite strategies: move out but keep the old house. So you're doing the short term, the long term rental, and then you flipped a house recently, right?
Yeah, so 2022 was a little bit crazy for us. So when we got to Mississippi, we purchased a duplex our first year here, and then that was kind of been our main property. Then towards the end of 2021, we found a new primary residence we were interested in, and it had a mother-in-law suite. And so our intent was to use that for short-term and midterm rentals. So we're close to the pharmacy school, so we are opening it up to students there. We're close to hospitals, so travel nurses, and then our first and most recent tenant was actually someone who was active duty military, and he was coming down for training. And so they stayed with us for, I think, 5 or 6 months. So right now it's vacant. We have some friends and family coming to visit, and so we'll be letting them use it. But with that, I think the best thing is if you're military or have access to the VA loan and you can use it more than once. That's how we bought our first primary residence, and then we were able to use the VA loan again for this second house. And so we turned our other house into a rental and then have this new house that we rent out the mother-in-law suite. And then we did a little bit of wholesaling, and we intended to keep the other property that we had rehabbed this past summer. But then with the way that the market was shifting, we decided we wanted to cushion our bank account a little bit, and we opted to flip it. And now we're looking for our next new primary and our next project.
No, I love that. It's what I love about what you've done recently is you've been able to try several different strategies, figure out what's a fit for you and your investment goals, but then also be nimble and react to the market. So as the market shifted, you changed your strategy. So I think it's important to talk about the market and the shift, looking at interest rates, looking at values changing. How has that shift over the last year or two driven your current investing and then your next steps in real estate investing?
I think right now we were just being a little bit more cautious with the way that the rates were. And then, within our network, people were saying, make sure you have some cash, make sure you have some reserves. And when we had initially bought that property, it's one actually I got under contract in 2021, and we didn't close it till like a year later because we had to help them through probate and that kind of stuff. So when we got it back in July of last year, then the interest rates were starting to go up. And then as we were doing the rehab, and we were starting to talk to the lenders, the interest rates were, I think, like 7%, 8%, especially for like a rental property, they were significantly higher. And so at that time, then, we talked about, does it make sense just to continue with the BRRRR, and it just wouldn't have cash flow very well. And obviously we could have eventually refinanced. But like I said, we decided that we wanted a little bit more cushion in the bank account for the time being. And then again, within our network, opportunities for creative finance are going to be coming up, such as subject to owner financing, looking at pre-foreclosures, foreclosures. A lot of people think it's impending doom, but that's where we see opportunity.
Yeah, and I want to shift there. You mentioned a couple of things, and then I want to get into the foreclosures as well. You mentioned the BRRRR strategy, and we've talked about that in the past a couple of times, but maybe just quickly, for the audience that may not be aware, what is the BRRRR strategy, and why does that not work as easily when the interest rates are shifting the way that they are?
Yeah, so BRRRR stands for buy, rehab, rent, and then refinance. And so what you do is you're finding a property that's undervalued. So this property was run down, had been vacant for 4 years, needed lots of work. And so we were able to get, private money to purchase it and fix it up. And then you would find a renter, put them in. And then when you refinance it, now you've taken a property that was significantly lower, not, worth very much money, but now because you fixed it up, it's going to appraise at a much higher value. And a lot of lenders will do, anywhere from 70 to 80% loan to value. So what that means is from that appraisal rate, you're able to pull that money out. And so essentially you're basically going into a property with no money down, because all that money now we put into it to fix it up, we're going to get back. But when the interest rates start going up, then, that difference in the cost that you're going to get back starts getting smaller, or, your payments don't work out as much. And so that was the biggest thing, is because I think when we initially, if we would have closed it in 2021, we would have had a pretty nice little cash flow. But now, because the interest rates were so high, the payment for the monthly payment was getting so high, and the rent we were going to get wasn't going to, equal out, which again, wasn't a completely ruined, burr. But like I said, we just opted for putting cash in the bank and knowing that more opportunities are on the horizon. So we're ready for them.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you for spending the time explaining that. I think there's a lot of information about that floating around, but it's nice to boil it down to something simple, like interest rates are going up, which hurts your cash flow, which makes the burr strategy a little more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Not impossible, but you have to evaluate it differently. Yeah. So perfect. But I do want to make sure we jump into the foreclosures. It's something that I saw you'd been posting about on Facebook. It's actually why I reached out to begin with, just to say, hey, let's talk about this. This is a great topic. So maybe define very quickly, right? This should be simple, but just for the sake of doing it, define very quickly what a foreclosure and a pre-foreclosure is, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. So I actually don't know true definition between pre-foreclosure versus foreclosure, but essentially what we're looking for is people that are getting behind on their payments. So, some people come through a hardship, whatever it is, health issue, loss of job, whatever, and they've stopped making payments on their mortgage. And so when they stop making payments, then that's obviously going to catch the bank's attention, or your lender. And so they start, sending you notices, you have to catch up the mortgage, you have to pay what's due. And when people let this go on, and I don't know what the typical amount of time, because we've talked to a couple people, different people, and it's different with different banks and lenders. But what happens then is eventually they're going to say hey, your property is going to get foreclosed on. We're going to send it to auction. And then you get no money from your property. You have to figure out some kind of solution, whether you borrow money, you find, an investor that's going to work with you, something to try to save that property from going to foreclosure. Because once you have it go to foreclosure, it's on your record, ruins your credit, makes it very hard to, purchase a house in the future.
It's the thing that I think lenders are always worried about, right? The whole reason they do underwriting is to see if they can parse out if you're going to be somebody that doesn't make payments and they're going to have to repossess the property and sell it to try to recoup their losses, right? That's the whole idea. So great. I, again, appreciate the definition. That helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're searching for a property like that, what's the best way to go about searching for a foreclosure property, particularly because I know I haven't seen a lot of those with a lot of the COVID rules. Are you seeing those come back, or what are you seeing in your market? How are you finding those properties?
We're starting to notice some more, you can follow auction.com starts to list them for you, which is a free website. You just sign up and they start letting you know if properties are in pre-foreclosure, foreclosure, if they're bank owned already. So, it might already got past that step. We've been following foreclosure.com is another site, and you can look up, per state. If you get pretty savvy at using your county records, then you can kind of get an idea of what's coming up for foreclosure, or you can actually go to your county or your courthouse and you can actually see them because they list them there. So we're pulling from a couple different places. And just like I said, we're trying to get ahead before auctions come up. Usually sometimes you only have a couple weeks, sometimes you have a month, 2 months. And so we're trying to look at some of the ones that are a little bit further ahead to try to help those owners keep their houses. But if that doesn't work, then potentially step in as a buyer, see if we can make something work that benefits everyone.
And I think that's something that I want to dig into a little bit. So you mentioned helping people out. Tell me about that, because I think one of the things that we really want to focus in on is how this can be a win-win, right? It sounds all doom and gloom. People can't make payments. They're losing their house. That sounds bad. Are you just coming in and saying cool, investment opportunity, this person's life is terrible? Or how are we making this a win-win for everybody involved? That is, to me, the ultimate goal of this.
Yeah. Myke, do you want to chime in?
I feel first things first, we always want to try to help them. It's not an opportunity for us to see if, we can capitalize on their misfortune, so we always try to think of what's a good way to, whatever the situation is, what's a good way to either make them keep the house. If you have a whole bunch of different situations, maybe they're trying to move or they're trying to relocate to a smaller house, whatever the sort of situation is, we want to make sure that we keep that in mind when we're trying to essentially help them, not necessarily negotiate, but kind of just see what their situation is and if there's still an opportunity to have them achieve that. So if not, we still come up with some sort of extra strategy to make sure if they don't get their number one goal, what's the next best thing. So we always want to try to help them out. It's never a situation to try to manipulate just because, we're behind on payments or we're behind on taxes. Okay, let me swoop in and make this happen so I can get this win. No, it's never like that.
I think that's so important, Myke, because I think that's the thought that some people jump to, right? Is, oh, this person is struggling. Well, now an investor swooping in just to find a good deal. But if you approach it the right way, like there's a really ethical and really fundamentally helpful way you can be involved in these.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think we've been lucky, with being in Mississippi, we've come across some really great mentors, and their number one thing is helpers, not hagglers. And our first goal is going into any property or any situation is, can we help them? Because I think people think that real estate is just a business, but we're in like the business of helping people. We're in the business of solving problems. Even our flip property, that property had been vacant for 4 years. They're paying taxes on it. They didn't want to put the money in to fix it. It was in a probate situation. And so by us helping solve that problem, we got them cash, which is what they wanted. They didn't have to deal with that headache anymore. We solved their problem. So we got a property for a great deal because of it. And then from there, the neighbors were very happy that we were fixing up this property that had been vacant, bringing down their value. And then, we're able to make someone happy as a first-time homeowner. And that goes the same with the foreclosures. Is our first thing that we tell them is, first and foremost, we want to try to help you keep this house. And if we can't, then we're going to look at what other options we can do to try to help you.
Love that.
Yeah, that helpers, not hagglers, and being in the business of solving problems. I'm like scribbling notes as fast as I can, because those are such good concepts to latch onto with real estate investing. That yes, this doesn't have to be someone taking advantage of someone or someone taking advantage of a bad situation, but helpers, not hagglers. That's so cool.
And obviously, some people, they get the call or they get the knock on the door, and the moment that they figure out that we're investors, sometimes they cut to conclusions like, oh, you're just here to try to scam me or take advantage of me. But they almost seem taken aback when we take a more personable approach and let them know that we're here to try to fix a situation. Obviously, we want to try to make it so it's beneficial on from both parties, but like Jenny said, first things first, like, how can we help you?
Which that actually came up with one foreclosure that we're trying to help the guy. He had been talking to us via text, and then this was the first time we were meeting him at his house. And he even said, he's like, are you those ambulance chasers? Are you guys like trying to profit off of our misfortune? Because he had already received a couple other calls from people who were having that approach. And we said, nope, that's not us. And so we've continued with our rapport building and working with him. And, we're hoping we can figure out a solution. We'll see if we get to that point, but we're still in the process of trying to figure out what's going to work for him.
No, I love that. I think that seems to be a theme that you've taken in your other investing strategies. And I think one of the things that we talked about right before we hit the record button is just in this different market, the shifting market, one of the other strategies that you're looking into is assumable loans. That's something I don't know that we've covered much on the podcast. So I'd love for you to just define what's an assumable loan and why is that advantageous in this specific market?
Yeah, so assumable loan, and honestly, when we've talked to lenders and we've talked to realtors, it's like this magic term that like no one is familiar, but we've actually made a couple offers on different houses now. So an assumable loan, it can be a VA loan, and I think it can also be FHA. I think those are a little bit less common, but for us, since Myke's active duty, we've been looking at the VA assumable loans. And what it is some of the properties in the last couple of years have locked in at some super great interest rates, right? So we're talking like 2.5, 2.75. rates that we're not going to see right now. And so people that purchase those houses during those times, but still need to like move now and maybe don't have enough equity in the property, especially if you have a VA loan and you put no money down, you have like literally no money into the property. They're trying to sell those properties now and they're having a hard time with it. So the assumable loans can be assumed by a veteran or a non-veteran, depending on some specifications from that lender. But like in our case, we're Myke's military, so we can assume a VA loan and we have what's called entitlement based off of the county that you live in. So I think it's, what is it now, like 750 for most of them, Myke?
Over 700.
Yeah.
Yes. Over 700, about 750.
Yeah. So over 700,000. And we can reuse the VA loan. So we could take over their 2.5 interest rate. And then we would take over whatever their payments are left on the house. So it's pretty much like that loan literally gets just changed over into our name. And then that frees up their entitlement so that they can use their VA loan in another place. And if someone's not military, unfortunately, then that military person loses that entitlement. So it's still possible to do it. It's just not as enticing to the military person because then they lose that home buying power.
But I think, so to wrap that up though, like to put that all into to one package, right? You're taking somebody who's gotten behind on payments, right? They can't make payments. They are maybe getting to the point where either the house is going to be foreclosed on, for example, or they're just in a situation where like they can't make this work anymore. And what you're doing is you're saying like, I'm going to come in, I'm going to take over the loan payments for you. I'm going to take your great interest rate, which is why I'm doing this, right? It's why it's worth doing. But I'm going to let you get out of the situation that you're in, whatever that is. Like you said, maybe they're downsizing, maybe they're looking at foreclosure, maybe, whatever. So it really does come in and it says, look, here's an individual that needs some help and it's going to help us to help them. So why don't we do this and spread the karma around? I love that idea of finding an advantage for both parties rather than just trying to take advantage of someone.
Right. And the assumable loans we've seen more so like on listings, because most of the time these people have like great houses, right? They like bought at the peak of the market where like they're getting these super great interest rates and they could buy a lot more house for those interest rates. So a lot of them are, most of them are usually moving if they're military. So maybe not necessarily the worst pain point, but again, little equity in the property. So if they have to pay off, their realtor, they probably are going to have to come out of pocket, maybe don't have as much value. But on the flip side of that, for like other homeowners would be more of like the subject to, where that might be a pain point for someone, or like when we're looking at the pre-foreclosures and foreclosures, potentially taking over the property subject to is more beneficial to them than letting it go, to foreclosure if we can't just sell it outright or buy it outright.
Yeah, I was just going to say that sounds a lot like subject to, where you're buying the property, but you're actually just, again, taking over their loan payments basically for them.
Yeah. And the difference is subject to, usually you just start making the payments to the lender. So for assumable, you actually have to still qualify for that loan. So that process, like the lender will actually, pull your W-2s, make sure you qualify for the loan before you're able to assume it. Whereas in subject to, that's not the case.
And what's nice, I imagine, about the assumable is that, there's no due on sale clause. Like this is all being underwritten with the lender. You're just taking over their terms. So that kind of mitigates that risk that some people are worried about on the subject to financing.
For subject to, the due on sale clause is something that a lot of people worry about, whereas on the assumable, it is actually going to underwriting. And so that is not a concern with assumable.
Love that.
Yeah. So for those that aren't familiar with the due on sale clause, can you explain that real fast for us?
Yeah. So due on sale clause, basically, if you're taking over a property subject to, you're just taking over the payments for someone. So basically, if you guys had a property and I take it subject to, I just start making the payments to your lender and there's no, change of information essentially. I mean, I'll get put on, the deed, but I'm not telling the lender that I'm starting to make these payments. I just take them over. And what happens though is that if the lender finds out, this can trigger a due on sale clause, which means that the entire amount of the loan is due at that time. And so this can even happen sometimes I believe this happens when you can like transfer a property into like an LLC. It's any time that it like changes whoever the owner is. And so that makes a lot of people nervous because then you have to have an exit strategy if you're paying on this property that you own subject to, and now they say, the $250,000 is due. You either have to be able to refinance it, you either have to have cash, to pay that off, or you have to sell it yourself.
Yeah. And I think that definitely, if that's a point of concern for people, then the assumable, there's advantage there. From the assumable though, when we talk about that strategy, I'm assuming that the person purchased that property as a primary residence.
Correct.
Do you have to move into it as a primary residence, or can you assume it even as a rental property?
No, so assumable has to be primary.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's, like I said, for us, we're looking for a new primary. And so that's made sense to us to make it work. Whereas subject to, you can turn it into a rental property. You can, use it as a primary residence, whatever you want to use it for.
No, that's perfect. And again, goes to that strategy of buying a primary residence, keeping the old property as your rental property, then with all of the great terms associated with the loan, because oftentimes you don't have to refinance out of that. You can just keep that property as a rental.
Right. So I think like Assumable is like kind of used as leverage. So for example, like one of the houses that we were looking at, I think Jenny described it a little bit, but the owners had been in there for a year, no equity. And essentially the only upgrade that they had made was they installed a fence. For them, that price that they listed the house for really wasn't justified. So that was kind of their leverage. Well, we're offering this assumable loan at this interest rate. Like, look at this. This is the spectacle. This is why we want you to get this house. And then subject to is more so to answer those pain points, or to address those pain points rather, that owner is dealing with.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I know, kind of on this theme of following you guys on social media, as Nate and I have been doing, there's another post that you shared that talked about some of this house hunting and how there can be really, really good marketing on the MLS for some of these houses. Sometimes these houses look a lot better on the MLS than they actually are, or sometimes, the numbers look a little bit better than they actually are once you get in there and really analyze the repairs and the needs for that property. So there can be that kind of emotional tug as you're searching for houses. And I know you guys have described a little bit of that. Could you share that story a little bit?
Yeah, so we've been looking at quite a few houses, and obviously a realtor's goal is to make houses look as pretty as they can, whether that's staging, using good photographers. And I mean, this goes both ways, because we've actually been surprised at properties that look terrible in the pictures, and then we get out into it and we're like, oh, this has a lot of potential. Mm-hmm. So for the one that we were looking at, was staged great. It was when they were still living in the house. They had family photos up. They had this great black and white theme going on everywhere. So it was decorated wonderfully. And their photographer was phenomenal, because when we looked at the house, it was completely different layout, where when they took the pictures, it looked like there was a lot more space. It was a lot more open. And then you got into it and you're like, wait, what's going on? Is this the same house that I'm looking at? There was a lot more damage that could be seen that you couldn't tell from the pictures. So again, I made a post saying that I was catfished by the house, because what I was thinking I was walking into was completely different, and it just didn't work for us. So they were asking, $250, and I said, I'd pay maybe $150 for the house, because it was just not what I was expecting.
I feel like that's all too common. And I love that you said about finding the place with the bad pictures that ends up being really nice inside. Those are my favorite houses, because you just you can smell the deal when you see those. Like, oh, whoever took these with their, their flip phone.
Yeah, exactly.
And as they were driving by, that's the shot that they used. Those are my favorite houses to go look at just in case.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing is, take a look at those ones. And a big thing that we do is we always look at the houses that have been sitting on market for a long time. If it's been sitting for 50, 60, 70 days, we're like, okay, let's take a second look at this. What's going on? Was it not staged well? Is it poor pictures? Because actually a house that I went to look at today, that's what it was. It's been sitting for over 100 days, and the house is great. It's slightly outdated. It doesn't have the fancy finishes, but the potential for it is very high. And so being able to looking at something and seeing the diamond in the rough is where you also find deals.
Yeah. I really like the insulation there of how that can help protect from that emotional draw, because there was one that looked really good on a spreadsheet, and the pictures looked really good, and I was really excited about it. And someone from our team went out to look at it, and he walked in and he said he walked right back out. He said, if you would have smelled this house, you would have walked right back out too. And the smell doesn't come through in the photos, right? So there are some things like that. And you just need to keep an objective mind if it's investing. Are there any tips or tricks that you guys have as far as keeping that objective mind to make sure that you're buying smart and not falling in love with these houses, whether it's the photos or the spreadsheet?
I will say that Mike's good at keeping me even keel. So I'm probably the more emotional one where I get like attached to ideas or potential and seeing like opportunities where sometimes I get a little bit more excited. And I think Mike's more of our reserve one. So having a good counterpart, I would say, is a first and foremost, something good to have.
I think it obviously depends on what type of property it is. Obviously, I'm going to think differently about a house that we're going to consider a primary versus, a potential investment property. They're two totally different, things that you're going to be looking for. When it comes to investment properties, most of the time you're not expecting that sort of quality that you would for a primary. You're not gonna be fazed if there's no granite countertops or nice tile or anything like that. So yeah, when it comes to primary, if I don't walk around and I don't picture myself literally hanging out in this house, I can tell, but probably by the first minute in there, whether or not it's a good fit.
The most important thing that we still follow is the numbers have to make sense. So even if I get emotionally attached to something, the numbers don't lie to me. And so that's where it's kind of like the gut check where I'm like, okay, shoot, like I'm emotionally attached to it, but these numbers don't make sense or I don't have multiple exit strategies, then it doesn't work.
Well, guys, you've obviously gained a lot of experience since we first interviewed you on the show way back when. And I wanted to ask you these kind of our three favorite questions again to kind of see how your answers have changed or just to get some new intel from you. So we'll hit you with our three final infusion questions. I'll take your hot take from Jenny first and then Myke to follow. So the first one, as always, is what's one tangible strategy that you use to make sure that your investing works hand in hand with your career?
I think for us, we learned early on that our ultimate goal was finding more time for ourselves and being able to do the things that we enjoy. And sometimes I get caught up in trying to do more, or, get caught up in being interested in things. So I tend to stretch myself a little bit thin. But now that we have our baby girl, which has been different than all our other episodes, I think it's keeping me a little bit more level-headed on what's my ultimate goal. It's to find time so that I can spend time with Myke. I can spend time with our, daughter and do the things that I want. And so sometimes when I look at time versus money, I choose time, which means that we use a lot of contractors. I have realtors who look at, properties and help me look at the properties for us. We have property management. Find the things that are important to you. Now, if you want to get your hands dirty and you absolutely love it, by all means, go for it. But ultimately, our goal is to have more time.
Yeah, I second that. Obviously, we both have full-time jobs. We have limited availability, obviously, with our daughter now in the mix. So it's very valuable how we utilize it, and so we have to be smart with it.
That's great.
The next question is, what's one resource that's been most helpful to you in your real estate journey, whether that's a book, podcast, person, author, website, whatever that would be?
I will say that finding good mentors, like ones that say, be a helper, not haggler, is probably the most important thing. And so we've been blessed down here. We actually are one of our mentors, Mr. Leon Johnson and Adam Johnson, are having a conference here in Biloxi in March. And so anytime they recommend a conference, we're in attendance because we learn just as much in the conference as we do outside of the conference. So look it up. I'm like blanking on the name of the conference right now, but look up Mr. Leon Johnson on Facebook and you'll find it. And then I went to another conference called Dealmaker in Richmond, Virginia. So surrounding yourself with people who are doing what you want to be doing, but doing it in a good way. So not the big fancy gurus, but the people that actually care about the people and doing good business. Those are the people that we want to facilitate ourselves around. And I think that has brought us the furthest in doing real estate and doing it well.
I think you're taking all my answers, but yeah, I was going to definitely second on just the community, honestly. Obviously, I'm pretty introverted if you couldn't already tell, but it's easy to sometimes feel intimidated by, going in these rooms and seeing all these successful people. But when you really, start talking to them and start peeling back the layers, they're super humble and they just want to help you. It doesn't matter what their experience level is, where they are in their career, how many doors they have. They want to make sure that they're value added, however they can help you. So I definitely appreciate that, and the people that we've came across in our journey.
That's great. All right, then the third one is, what's one piece of advice that you'd give to a pharmacist or anybody starting as a real estate investor?
I would say get into your local RIA, so Real Estate Investing Association. I think that's the acronym. But look at your local RIAs, and if you're not finding what you need at your local RIAs, look at some of the conferences. Maybe I'll give you guys like a list of some good ones that I've been to, that where you're around good community, and those are ones to look at. A lot of them are switching to online format, so you can watch the RIA meeting online. So maybe it's not directly related to your like where you're at, but like they talk about creative finance, they talk about subject to, there's all these things that you can get involved in. And like Myke was saying, like a lot of the people want to see you succeed. So just go, introduce yourself, talk to people. And that's, I think, again, how we've been able to get where we are. And I think that's, where we're gaining a lot of our knowledge is because we're hanging out with people who are smarter than us and who are doing the things that we want to be doing.
I think to kind of tie in the military piece, really get smart on the VA loan and all the opportunities that it could present to you. Like I said, I've been in 15 years, and it was really only after the second half of my career so far that we truly realized the gravity of what the VA loan could do for us. Had we had any inclination on the capabilities or the opportunities that we could use it for way early on, we could have been in a totally different spot. But you can really start as early or as late as you want to, as long as you're just willing to take that leap and just go for it. Sometimes you just have to go in head first. Still be smart with it, obviously, but just go for it.
Great advice.
I love it. I love your guys' story. I love the inspiration. If people want to reach out and talk more or learn more about you, where can people find you?
So you could look me up on Facebook. Myke does not really answer on his Facebook, but you can find me on Facebook. I also have an Instagram handle, Investment Mindset RX. And then I have a book club called Investment Mindset Book Club. It's a Facebook page. And then hopefully in the next couple weeks, stay tuned, because I will have a website where I want to document a little bit more of like our journeys and kind of share some more information, but kind of have it in a blog format. So that will be coming in the near future. So hopefully it'll be up and running by the time this launches. But if not, keep checking back. It should be up in the next month or so.
Awesome. We'll make sure to put that in the show notes. And I look forward to checking out that blog. You guys always put out great content, so I'm excited to see some more of that.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thank you guys for joining us. As always, again, clearly our favorite guests. You've been on 3 times. So and just, again, thank you for sharing your story and for doing the work that you guys are doing. It's awesome to see and to hear about. So again, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you. And hopefully it'll be another episode in the near future for something else.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. If you like what you heard on today's show, please leave us a review and subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. If you have a question, know someone that would make a good guest, or want to connect with Nate or David, head on over to yfprealestate.com and join the growing YFP Real Estate Investing Facebook group. As we conclude this week's episode of the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast, an important reminder that the content in this podcast is provided to you for your informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for investment or any other advice. Information in the podcast and corresponding materials should not be construed as a solicitation or offer to buy or sell any investment or related financial products. We urge listeners to consult with a financial advisor with respect to any investment. Furthermore, the information contained in our archived newsletters, blog posts, and podcasts is not updated and may not be accurate at the time you listen to it on this podcast. Opinions and analyses expressed herein are solely those of your financial pharmacist, unless otherwise noted, and constitute judgments as of the dates published. Such information may contain forward-looking statements which are not intended to be guarantees of future events. Actual results could differ materially from those anticipated in the forward-looking statements. For more information, please visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/disclaimer. Thank you for your support of the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. Have a great rest of your week.